Anyway, so 1 and 2, as I said, and 3, we did them with each other. So let's start with number 4 right away. It says here n is between -2 and -1. What's the value of 7 plus half n rounded to the nearest whole number? So pick a number, any number, between -2 and -1. And I think -1.5 seems to be a very reasonable choice. And substitute that over here. So now it's 7 plus half, and then multiply that by -1.5. Now -1.5 is the same as -3/2. So when you multiply those, it will become, yes يا حبيبتي, -3/4. Yes يا كل. عادي. So because here this 7 doesn't have the same denominator as this one, I added a 4 here down, up and down. So it became 28/4 plus -3/4. 28 plus -3, that's 25/4. Now 25/4 is exactly 6.75. I think, yeah. Let me check 26. 6.25 is 75. So if I'm asked to round to the nearest whole number, it means that I'm supposed to approximate this. And since it's 6.2, then when it's approximated, it will become just 6. So the final answer must be 6, nothing else, not 6 point something. It will be considered incorrect. Does that make sense? Awesome. Everyone, we're good? Awesome. Right, moving on to number 5. This is an absolute inequality. And we said whenever we have an absolute inequality, in order to remove the absolute sign, I'll just write it now as half x minus 1 without any absolutes, as less than or equals to 1. And then I'll move the -1 to the other side. So I'll have half x less than or equals to 2. And then I'll move the half to the other side. Oh, I forgot doing the other side as well, see? On this side, I'm supposed to put the -1. And now I'm supposed to move the -1 on both sides. So -1 plus 1 and 1 plus 1. So that's 2 and 0. Then the half would go to both sides by division. So 0 divided by half is just 0. And then 2 divided by half will become 4. So x is a number that's between 0 and 4. So which of the following is not a solution? Definitely the 6. The 0 works, the 2 works, and the 4 works. They're all between 0 and 4, except for the 6. Does that make sense? Awesome. Let's check 6. Already a number line graphed, and they're asking you to represent it. It's clear here that x is bigger than or equals to the 4 because it's shaded, and it's at the same time x is supposed to be less than but not equals to the -2. So an x here is bigger than or equals to 4. So looking at the choices, I think choice A is the only correct answer. X here is bigger than or equals to 4 and less than -2. I think this was a very easy question. Moving on to number 7, 1/4x minus 1 is less than or equals to -x plus 5, and you're asked what's the greatest possible value for x. So it's just like an equation where we're going to move the x's. بس هنا هنحرك, as I said, the smaller x, which is the -1, towards the bigger x, so that the x would remain positive. So 1/4x plus x, and then the inequality sign, and then the 5 as it is, and then this -1 goes to the other side as +1. 1/4 plus 1 would become 5/4. x and it's less than or equals to 6. I'll move the 4 to the other side by multiplication. So 5x is less than or equals to 24. And then I'll move the 5 to the other side. So x is less than or equals to 24 divided by 5. Which means x is supposed to be less than or equals to what's it called? 4 point something. So what is the greatest possible value for x? You can put it as 4 point whatsoever as it is the number itself. So let me calculate that on a calculator. 4.8, yeah. So x is less than or equals to 4.8, which means that x could be equals to the 4.8 itself because there's an equal sign. If it was just less than, I can't pick the 4.8. I have to pick one that's less than the 4.8. Any questions there? Moving on, if 3 over 4n minus 2 is in an absolute is less than 1 and n is an integer, what is one possible value for n? So as we said, when we're trying to solve an absolute inequality, in order to remove the absolute signs, we just repeat the same number here, but with the opposite sign, and the same sign here in the same direction this way. And then we will move the negative 2 to both sides. So I'll have negative 1 plus 2, which is just 1. And then 1 plus 2 would become 3. The 4 would go to both sides by multiplication, so it becomes 4 less than 3n and less than 12. Then the 3 goes to both sides by division, so it becomes 4 over 3 less than n, and 12 divided by 3 will become 4, so less than 4. What is one possible value for n? Pick any number between 4 over 3, which is 1.3333, and 4, and you can use any of those as the answer. So if one of you pick 2, 3, or 2 and 3 are the only possible choices, by the way, 2 and 3. So it's either 2 or 3 because it has to be an integer, it can't be 2 point something. وازاي اعرف هو عايزين احلها بأنهي طريقة؟ ايه الطريقة المختلفة هنا؟ يعني اقصد ايه الطرق المختلفة؟ هم كلهم نفس الحاجة. أنهي طرق تقصدي عليها؟ Why? 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 Number 8 و number 4 أعتقد. Okay, number 4. This one. لا, this one wasn't. This one كانت already الانيكواليتي محلولة, يعني هو مديني الانسر. أنا بوصل لحد الانسر دي on my own. هو مفيش. number 5 اهي دي مثلا برضو نفس الحوار. شلنا الابسولوت, عيدنا ده زي ما هو في الناحيتين وطلعنا الانسر. نفس ده بالظبط اللي عملناه في الابسولوت اللي هنا دي بالظبط. هو بس كان يعني يا اما هيقول لي what is one possible value, فانا بختار اي رقم في الانترفال دي. فاهم حاجه؟ كارلا اوكي. No, Carla, no no keywords. Can I multiply to entire equal to get the whole number value for that? So multiply it all by 3, you mean? I'm sorry. Carla, no words, no highlight words or something like that. It's just an inequality. And better, you cannot, because that would change the values. So you're talking I should multiply the whole thing by 3, for example. If that happened, then it totally changes the values that are possible for n. It's not even in the same range. You get my point better? Most welcome, ya Hamid. Awesome. All right. So we're now talking about the linear inequalities. So yesterday we discussed the linear equations and the quadratic equations, which are just the lines and the slopes and the points and so on. Now a linear inequality is just a line and everything, but the only difference is that it has a shading to the line. So it's not just a line in the graph in the XY axis. There's also a shading next to that line. And because of that shading, this is how we know it's an inequality. So if it's an equation, there wouldn't have been any shading. If it's an inequality, then there must be shadings. So what do we do? For example, here they're asking which inequality represents this. So the first thing you do is just usually, as if just like any line, we get the slope and we get the y-intercept. And clearly the y-intercept is clear here. The y-intercept is 2. Now as for the slope, we just need to calculate the rise and the run. And the rise here is just 2, while the run here is 3. So the slope is considered rise over run 2 over 3. Give me 1 second, I have to be right back. So as we were just saying, we got now the slope is 2 over 3 and we got the y-intercept. Now we have to check every one of those inequalities and check the slope and the y-intercept. Now remember that these are following the same standard form, اللي هو ax plus by equals c, where here the slope is supposed to be negative a over b and the y-intercept is c over b. So negative الرقم اللي جنب x, which is this negative 3, it becomes positive 3, over الرقم اللي جنب y, which is positive 2. That's the slope. While the y-intercept is 6 over the number next to the y, which is 2. So I have the slope as 3 over 2, and I have the intercept as 3. Is the y-intercept supposed to be equals to 3? No, it's supposed to be equals to 2. So then this one does not work. If you check the second one, also the y-intercept is this number divided the number next to the y, so 6 over 2, which is 3. So that one still does not work. Now it could be C and it could be D, because this has 6 over 3, which is 2, and this one is 6 over 3, which is also 2. So this could work and this could work. Now regarding the slope, it's negative the number next to the x over the number next to the y, and clearly they both have the same slope, 2 over 3, which is the correct slope. So what's the difference? The difference is in this inequality sign. What does the inequality sign do? It is responsible for the shading. So what we're going to do is the following. We're going to substitute the point 0, 0. Substitute a point in the shaded region. Take a point in anywhere in this shaded region. For example, this one here. This one is 0, 0. And substitute with it in the inequality itself. Instead of the y, put a 0. So 3 times 0. Instead of the x, put a 0. And bigger than or equals to 6. And check if the inequality is true. So 3 times 0 is 0. 0 minus 0 is 0. 0 is bigger than 6. Is 0 bigger than 6? That doesn't make sense, so it's not. So definitely the other one is the right one. And if you want to know if that's true, substitute here the x and the y with the zeros, and you'll find that it makes sense. 0 is less than 6. Yes, it is true. So D is the right one. So the question is split into 2 parts, kind of thing. The first part is identifying everything regarding the line. It's identifying, for example, the slope, the intercept. And that's the only important things in a line. But then the second part is regarding the inequality sign. And that is regarding, is done, or is shown by the shading. So in order to figure out whether the shading is true or not, you need to substitute a point in the shading itself and check if it satisfies the equation or not. I'm sorry, Beraz, what were you saying? No, ya habibi. No problems here, yani? Are you good? Or do you have a question? Awesome. Carla, we're good. Ali, we're good. Type. Check one like this one, for example. You have an inequality here, apparently, and you're asked which one of those is the right one. This one is much easier because it's a horizontal line. So any horizontal line has the equation as y equals something. And it's equal to this value here. Apparently, the y value here would be -2. So this means that y is equals to -2. This is supposed to be the equation of the line. But then it's shaded. And it's shaded everything above the line. So it means that y is bigger than the -2. Now, if it was bigger than or equal, then this must be a solid line. But because it's a dotted line or a dashed one, then it doesn't have the equal sign. So therefore, the correct answer for this one is C. And it makes sense. Y is bigger than. Yes, of course, ya حبيبتي. Does that make sense, everyone? Right. So for now, I'd like you please to head to Google Classroom and start working on 4-3. Graphing, huh? You get my point. Graphing. And for those are just 4, so I'll give you 5 minutes and we'll correct those, and that would be it for the day. So 5 minutes for form code 4-3, graphing linear inequalities, starting right now. Okay, let's work on number 3. We did already 1 and 2 as usual. Can't find the pen. So we're still looking at the same thing. There's a line, and apparently it's a dotted line. So therefore, the sign that has the equal is not really an option, just because it's not a solid line. It's a dotted line. So we excluded C and D right away. Now we're looking at the shading. That's everything mainly, because they're both exactly the same inequalities. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick a point, either pick a point in the shaded region. So for example, pick anyone, pick like, let's say -2 and -2. That's definitely in the shaded region. And substitute into the equation, -2 plus -2, and check if it's less than -1 or not. So -2 plus -2 is -4, and yes, it is less than the -1. It's the inequality is true. So therefore, A is definitely the correct answer. If you decided to shade or to substitute with the point 0, 0, then know that it must be not true. Is 0 less than -1? Yes, it's not true. It's the other side. So still, A works best for both. Does that kind of make sense or not? So the circle is shaded makes sense. What do you mean the circle is shaded? No, ما هو those بقى يا Carla are not on a number line. يعني if we're talking على number line, then yes, the shaded circle means less than or equal. But these are just points on a line on an XY axis. في الكيس دي it doesn't matter. What matters or what decides whether it's an open or a closed, less than or equal or just less than, is the line itself. If it's dotted, then it's either less than or bigger than without the equal. On the other hand, هنا, if it's a line like this one and the shading goes like this, then this one must be either less than or equal or bigger than or equal. Makes sense? Now that fixed the problem يعني. Most welcome يعني. طيب, now checking number 4. You're given which of the following inequalities represents the graph above. Now the inequalities are different, but you can tell a few things. For example, this line passes through the origin. This point is considered a known point. حتى if they did not write it down, I know that this point is the origin, which is 0 and 0. So I have 2 points right there. I can calculate the slope. And I know for a fact that the y-intercept of this graph is 0 برضه, because it intersected the y-axis at 0. So let's calculate the slope. The slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, which means it will become 2 over 1, which is 2. The slope is 2. Now let's check each of the following inequalities and check which of them has the slope of 2. The first one, the slope is negative the number next to the x over the number next to the y, which is 2. So that could be the answer. The second one is the exact same slope, which is برضو 2. It could be the answer. But this one is negative 1 over negative 2, which is positive half. So that doesn't work, and neither D works. I eliminated 2 choices. طيب, how do I decide which one of the first 2 is the right one? Based on this inequality sign. And again, I'll substitute it, but I can't use the point 0, 0 because it's on the line itself. It's better to use a point like here, for example, which is negative 1 and 1. So substitute 2 times negative 1, and then the y, substitute instead of the y 1, and check if it's bigger than 0 or not. This would get me negative 2 minus 1, which would be negative 3, and negative 3 is not bigger than 0. So definitely B is the right one without even trying it. It's the only remaining choice. And if you just want to check, here it goes, 2 times negative 1 minus 1 less than or equals to 0. That's negative 2 minus 1 less than or equals to 0, which is negative 3 less than or equals to 0. That's true. So this B works definitely. Any questions in this one? Fine. We're done for the day. I'd like best to ask you, please, to do the chapter test as a homework. Now, to point out one thing, the chapter test has questions there that involve شوية word problems. حاضر, I will يا حبيبتي حالا. This chapter test involves some word problems translated into inequalities. This is very and just normal questions like the ones we solved and the system of inequalities. I'd like you to try your best to figure out even the questions that we haven't taken or covered, which are only the system of inequalities. Number 10 is the one we haven't covered before, number 9, number 8, and 7. So everything else is covered. I'd like you to try again your best in those. Next class, I'll explain the systems of inequalities and we'll solve those homework questions with each other. Now let me repeat this last part again. The last part, yeah, Carla, which means by when we started substituting, well, which part exactly confused you? The whole substitution part. So when we started we said we're going to now check shading بقى, يعني الفرق ما بين ال two choices ان ال inequality sign مختلفة, واحدة أكبر واحدة أصغر, ففهمنا إن الفرق هيبقى في shading. So we decided to pick a point in the shaded region. Picked this point, أو let's pick any point. Let's say عايز تختاري negative 5 and positive 2. So this point here, negative 5 and 2 مثلا. Any point in the shaded region and substitute مكان ال x negative 5 ومكان ال y 2 and check if it's فعلا bigger than 0 or not. 2 times negative 5 became negative 10 minus 2 bigger than 0 يعني negative 12. Is negative 12 bigger than 0? No, not true. So therefore, this equation or this inequality is not right and I have to select the other one. خلاص that's it, that's the answer. بس لو انت حابة تتأكدي برضه substitute فيها الx بنيجاتيف 5 والy ب 2 هتلاقي ان هنا الانيكواليتي مظبوطة هتطلع نيجاتيف 10 minus 2 less than or equals to 12 يعني نيجاتيف 12 less than or equals to 0 which is true definitely. Make sense يا كارلا؟ You're most welcome يا حبيبي. طيب please fill in the exit ticket all of you عشان خاطري and that's it again. Thank you so much for today. I think it was a very interesting one.